Good afternoon. This is Mr. Hunter again, coming to you off of Facebook Live. And we're so excited today to introduce some folks who you may not have seen on Facebook Live before, as well as talk a little bit about our streaming school and the upcoming start date. So why don't I start by introducing what's been a great welcome for me and just a fabulous team so far. The first person I'd like to introduce is Miss Parker, Mrs. Parker. She is joining us from another district close by, and we're so excited to have her as the assistant principal in the middle school. And Mrs. Maldonado is also, you probably recognize her name because she was the Dean of Students last year. And this year, she is the assistant principal of the elementary school. I'm going to introduce them, and they're going to get a chance to introduce themselves. Ms. Maldonado.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Melissa Maldonado, and I'd just like to share some information about myself. So I started at Grand Peak in February as the Dean of Students, and now I am just super excited and privileged to come back as the assistant principal. I've been in education for 15 years. I've taught many different grade levels: kindergarten, first grade, third, fourth, and fifth grade, just to name them all. I am engaged. We have 5 children together, ages 9 through 26, and we also have a dog named Nova. She's been an awesome addition to our family, well, except for the time that she did eat up my slipper. So, what else? I'm originally from the Bronx, from New York. Most of my family is still there, my mom and my sister. So thank goodness for Facebook and FaceTime so that we can stay connected. What else about me? Some fun things that I enjoy doing. I like to hike. I definitely enjoy spending time with my family. I like traveling. I love learning about new cultures and experiencing the food, definitely all the food. But seriously, if you choose to be with us, either through our streaming school or in person, we can't wait to have you back. Thank you.
And hi everyone, it's so great to see you virtually here. My name is Nicole Parker, and as Mr. Hunter mentioned earlier, I will be joining Grand Peak this year as the assistant principal to our middle school, but I am definitely looking forward to working with all of our elementary, middle school students, families. It's so great to have this opportunity this year, and I just can't wait to see you all soon. A few things about me. I actually am not a Colorado native. I was born in Mississippi, so on the East Coast, kind of southern area down there of the United States. So that's where I grew up, spent most of my childhood, but I'm from a military family, so moved around Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and then we finally landed here in Colorado Springs in 1998. So I've lived here for about 22 years. I did go to high school, and then I went to college from the University of Colorado. So I am spent most of my adult time here in Colorado, and I love Colorado Springs and all that it has to offer. It's been a great experience for me. I am married to a ballroom dancer, actually, so it's quite fun for me to be around that type of environment when I'm not at school. But don't ask me to dance because that's not my thing. That's up to my husband. We do have 2 young children, Dawson and Rush. So they keep me on my toes when I am not here. They love being outside, which takes me outside a lot. So I spend a lot of time outside gardening and working in our yard. That's become a new hobby of mine. We have a Saint Bernard dog. So it's fun to actually see the interaction between this big, massive dog that we have and our 2 little boys. I've been in education for 13 years now. I have been a teacher in elementary, so first, third, and fifth grade. And I've spent the last couple years of my time in middle school. So that is leading me to this next phase of working with our middle school staff and students, which I can't wait to do. So I hope that you enjoy everything that we're sharing with you today, mainly about our streaming school and what we've been working on to offer you here in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Mrs. Parker. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the changes. Obviously, with COVID-19, there have been some changes. We just had an announcement by the governor today, and fortunately, it looks like we're still on to go as far as the governor's reporting for us right now. So that's great news. So you may have heard that there was a District 49 board meeting last night, and what they decided at that meeting was that they're pushing their start date back to the 17th of August. They were on the 10th of August, they're moving to the 17th. It's true for that's a similar move for other districts in the area. District 20's moved to the 24th of August, and there are several other districts who pushed back later into August. Because they moved back based on a recommendation from the Department of Health, not an order. So what that means is that the district decided for themselves to follow the recommendation. As a result, we as a charter school are going to consider that recommendation as well. We are going to consider that on Friday at a board meeting in the afternoon. We're anticipating it being at 3:30, could be 3, but I think it's 3:30. You can visit our website to find out more. The other aspect that we'll be looking at in that board meeting is the use of face masks. Currently, we are requiring face masks for all adults in the same spaces with each other. We are also requiring face masks in the building and in our transition spaces for grades 5 and up. We're already doing that because that's a state order. What we're considering now is doing what the district and some other districts in the area are doing, which is requiring face masks for kindergarten to 4th grade also, and first grade to 4th grade also, and we're going to consider that in the board meeting also. There are some considerations that we'd really like to make sure that everybody at the school is safe, make sure that the teachers are safe, and make sure that all the students are safe. So that's why we're considering that. We are considering that recommendation. So we will be interested in having that discussion also at the board meeting on Friday. Streaming school. We are so excited to announce streaming school. What the Board of Education, the District Board of Education made really clear yesterday was that there's a possibility we could be starting online. There's also a possibility, and right now what we're planning for is to start with an online option and in school. So that is our hope, and that's our plan A. But there's also a possibility we will be starting online. That could happen, and we anticipate being able to make that announcement on August 11th. The district will make their announcement on August 10th, and we'll probably be able to follow that with data from the state. We're not going to be making that decision without quite a bit of data, and that information comes from El Paso County Health and the state. So we're going to want to look at a lot of factors involving what our case rates are and what the other districts are doing and other schools are doing. We want to make sure we're being as strong as we can in our education and getting out there, but we also want to make sure we're making safe decisions. So streaming school could be an option for everyone. And we want to make sure that you understand what that means, because we're super excited. We believe this is a really unique offering that you're not going to see at a typical school. And what the plan is to have an actual school day schedule, as I described in the last Facebook meeting. But you'll have an actual your child will have an actual school day schedule. You'll know when reading starts. You'll know when math starts during the day. You'll know when your specials class is. And you can tune in at those times to go see those classes. In fact, we're looking at having a minimum of 3 hours of streaming per student. So a student will be able to look at least 3 hours of content per day from their teachers. For those parents who they have different arrangements and different setups, we're still in emergency times. They're not able to hit that regular schedule in the morning or the afternoon. What we're going to be able to offer is to be able to record at least an hour and a half per day of that stream. The idea is that first instruction for math, that time when teachers are explaining things on the board, describing how to learn about money, and all that's available directly up there. That is absolutely time that you'd want to be able to access later in the day as well. So if you wanted to see it again, you could. If you weren't able to see it in the morning, you could also. So, and you'll know when those times come, because if, for example, math is at 8:30, then you'll know that direct instruction that's coming at 8:30 is that's what you can expect on that day, and that's when you'll see how to do what you're expected to do there. At that point, the teacher will record maybe 20, 30 minutes of math and then stop recording maybe when the students are in individual conversations. And then that recording will be saved for the afternoon. So after, we haven't worked out exactly the time, but probably around 4 o'clock, we'd be able to post that, and you'd be able to see that video in the afternoon. Then the student would know, if they got off, they'd say, goodness, I'm going to get off now, and we have something our family has to do. But I know at 9:45 reading starts. So as a parent, you're going to know, goodness, I can tune back in at 9:45 and get that direct instruction. If I miss it, if I miss the reading instruction, I go visit at 4, and I can go see that first instruction to learn how to do that information, learn how to do that lesson. The beauty of that situation is that you'll have access to the workbooks, the textbooks, all the information you need. All that will be home with you, as well as a school computer. If you have a school computer, it will let us do a couple of new things that we've just been able to enable. And one is the use of a program called Securely. And with Securely, the teachers are able to see what the students are doing. So if a student gets a little off task, they can ask them a question, what's going on right now? Or can you come back to this website? The teacher could also decide that student on the school Chromebook could only see, say, one of 3 websites. So if a student has a tendency to get kind of off task, that computer will only have access to those websites, and the teacher can determine that up front. So that's only possible if you're using a school Chromebook, and we will be issuing those to families who've signed up for streaming school. You may say, well, how am I going to get any good information from my teacher if they're across the room and they are talking to other kids on the other side of the room? Well, all teachers on streaming school will be wearing these wireless microphones. So if they start in the front of the room, you'll be able to hear them. They're doing their lesson. And then if they decide to go help some students in the back of the room, you'll still be hearing the teacher. You'll still be hearing their instruction and that support to that student also. So these wireless microphones will give the teachers the ability to move around the room and still be very accessible to anyone on streaming school. We will also have a number of websites that are going to be much more user-friendly, especially for the younger students, especially kindergarten And first, second, we're going to be using a tool called Seesaw. And the beauty of Seesaw is that it enables a student to actually write on the screen that they're working on. It also enables a student to instantly record their voice. So if they have a response to something, they can push a button that's right there and record their voice and have a response. So that it's a much more interactive and it's much more available to younger students, whereas just doing a Google Meet might not be, might be real great for the kids 3rd grade and older, but the younger kids need a different space and a different way to access the technology. We are going to continue to use Google Classroom to post assignments. So you'll see your assignments there. And then through the other piece, you won't have to remember all these websites, because on your teacher's webpage, on their homepage, they're going to have all the resources that they're going to be using right there. I think we have do we have a model up for Ms. Costantino already?
We'll have it up. Yeah,
we'll have it up. So each of the teachers, starting with the streaming teachers, but all the teachers will eventually have these, and certainly if we end up going online, we'll absolutely need them for everyone. Each teacher will have their own page, and on that page will house all the resources that you'd need. So you don't have to remember all the sites. You don't have to remember the passwords. We're going to help you out with that. All that will be accessible on that website, and you'll be able to figure out how to do that. So the hope is that with streaming school, you will have to visit the school at least once, because we'll want to get you the Chromebook, we want to get you your workbooks, and we want to get you your textbooks. So you've got to make sure that you pick those things up, and we'll be scheduling those times if you're not coming in for the assessment days coming up next week. So that's all I have for streaming school right now. We're so excited about it because it's going to give you a live look into your learning, and much more interaction, and much more content's going to be delivered through this medium. So we're super excited about it, both as teachers and as staff.
Any questions?
Bring it on.
All right. So, and you've already discussed this, but just hit it one more time. What about working parents who don't get home till after 6? Will these videos be condensed at all? And I said, yes. But if you wouldn't mind just kind of rehashing that quickly, just so that person understands.
Sure, absolutely. So the idea is, if you can't make a 8:30 math class, if you can't make the 9:45 reading class, we want to make sure that content is available for you. We don't want you to lose the content. The beauty is, if you're not able to get some content, you're going to be able to see your teacher next day in person if you can. If you're not able to get on routinely till after 6 p.m., you'll have access to at least an hour and a half. We don't want to overwhelm the situation, but at least an hour and a half of direct instruction that you'd be able to choose from. So if you didn't need help with reading, don't visit that. If you need help with your math class, you can visit that video and just get the help with your math class. That'll be available to you into that evening time, and you can if you'd like to see that as a parent, or if you'd like to have your child see it, you can have them visit it. So it'll be an hour and a half. The other piece on these videos, you can accelerate the speed, so you could see it at double time, and what would that be? 45 minutes of video. So if you can track someone's voice, mine, I don't speak very fast, so if you wanted to see me on double time, you could probably still understand what I'm saying.
Here's one. Do they keep all of their, so first question is, if you're an online student, do you need school supplies?
If you're an online student, what we still recommend, I believe right now, is that we keep that you have the same school supplies that you would have if you go to school. Obviously, you wouldn't bring them to school. You'd have them at home. And if there's a tissue box, you wouldn't necessarily have to get an extra tissue box or anything from what you have in your house. But you would have, if your class required, a folder for each subject and a writing journal, then you would just get the folder for each subject in the writing journal and have those at home instead of have those at school. So for right now, there may be some slight tweaks to that as we get closer, but for right now, we're keeping the same school supplies. So if you've already shopped, please don't go return everything. You're going to still need those school supplies.
Another question, what about, can people change their mind on their in-person or online forms that they already submitted?
Good question. We want to remain flexible. While it's a challenge for us operationally, we want to remain flexible to parents and be able to adapt to what families need. So if you need to change your selection, you went in the first week of the offering of the 2 choices. We want to be able to be flexible enough to say, okay, look, we have some different rules that came up. I'm seeing this, and this is going to work better for my family. Make sure you just contact the office. So Marcia Billingsley is our registrar, and she's the one to contact if you're interested in switching from, say, streaming school to physically being here, or from being here to streaming school. So if you need to make that switch for any child in your family, make sure you just let Mrs. Billingsley know.
So one more follow-up on the streaming school is, if kids are doing streaming school, do they lose their seat in class once it's safe for everyone to go back?
Very good question. The only way that you can lose your seat is if you don't enroll for either streaming school or being in person. That's the only way you can lose your seat, because it is possible that when students start coming back, we will have a cap on our enrollment. We won't be able to have new students join us. But if you start with us in streaming school, there will absolutely be a seat for you when you're ready to come back to the physical school.
Here's one, and here's just a quick one. Do online kids have to wear uniforms? Holly was asking me about this the other day.
It's a good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Right now, what we're going to do is we are not requiring uniforms for students in streaming school. We do expect that you dress appropriately, though, because you will be potentially viewed by your classmates as well as your teacher. So make sure you're obviously wearing clothing. I have a 14-year-old who likes to walk around the house without a shirt on a lot. So in that situation, we ask him when he's doing something online, if he's doing Zoom or other Google Meet, that he wears a shirt. So we do ask that. We are asking that of all students. The other piece that I wanted to mention is that every student should have a mask, because we are doing a lot of transitioning in hallways to bathrooms, when we go out to recess or to out to the carpool. That masks are absolutely required. So every student needs a mask. Currently, K to 4 students, it's highly recommended that you wear a mask in class. But what we want to do is also have some fun with this, because we don't want this all to be about rules and things that we can't do and make this a bummer. What we want to do is have some fun, and as long as your mask is appropriate for school, feel free to wear designs on your mask, to have any color you'd like to choose. That's great. If you have characters on your mask, if you want to draw characters, any of that's great. So in terms of the dress code for students who are coming here, make sure that the mask is comfortable for you, but then otherwise, let's have some fun with it.
Let's see. And I know we kind of have discussed this, but will streaming students have the opportunity to interact with other students?
Really good question. So do streaming students have the opportunity to communicate with other students is the question. Absolutely. We want to make it the experience as interactive as possible. So when I explained that the first part of instruction may be direct, you're understanding how to do a problem. The problem may be drawn for you on the board. The teacher may describe how they want you to approach a problem. That's just the teacher talking. But what we also want, in that other streaming amount of time, the 3 hours amount of time, is much more of a time when we can collaborate We can work together in groups or pairs, and students will be able to do that work in pairs and groups through that medium. So we anticipate being able to have interaction between students. There will also be social emotional time. We want to make sure that kids get a chance to interact with each other. Just because they're home doesn't mean they can't have that interaction at the school. And the beautiful part about being in streaming school is that if you're building those relationships with those students there, when those kids come back to school, you're gonna have a jump up on whatever that relationship is, because you may not have didn't know that your classmate was that tall, and so you all of a sudden you see them in class and you've only seen them on video, and so you come back in October and you realize, gosh, wow, it's really good to see you in person. So the anticipation is that we want social opportunities in these classrooms. You'll certainly be part of a cohort, and there's also so the social connections are going to be extremely important. Thanks for that question.
There's one. Is there a specific teacher assigned to streaming for each grade? When my child returns to in-person learning, will they be with the same streaming teacher?
Good question. The question is, are you going to be with the same streaming teacher when my child comes back to school? Right now, we believe so. What we see happening right now is we have pretty much a full classroom of 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade is streaming. So one teacher is committed to that whole streaming group. When those students start to come back to school and make the decision to come back into the physical environment, they'll come back into that school. Maybe, let's say 10 of them come back, or maybe 15 of them come back in October. So then there would be 15 back in October and maybe 5 to 10 who'd still be streaming. The teacher would be running both of those environments. In first and in kindergarten and first, there's one teacher each who's doing the streaming, but they also have several students who are in the class with them right now. So they are not just streaming. That's also true of our middle school. So our middle school will not have dedicated streaming teachers in the same way. Each of them, because they teach their own individual subject, will have streaming schools in each homeroom. So in middle school, you'll be in a streaming environment, but you'll also be there with classmates who will be in the classroom with you. And the expectation is we want you to be able to participate in class. We don't want you just listening on Zoom or on Google Meet. We want to make sure that you have a chance to have a voice, to ask questions, to participate with people. So we would be pairing you for conversations and have you engage that way.
Here's a good question, but it's one we'll talk about Friday. If a student can't breathe, can they take their mask off for 1 second to grab a breath, then put it back on?
Absolutely. There's a lot of good questions about masks. The expectation in class is especially for the older students right now, is to have a mask on all the time. But obviously there are things that happen, there's a physical problem with the mask. You might need to switch masks. What we ask is you just try to keep the mask on until you're able to possibly go to the restroom and find an individual space there and change that or make that more comfortable for yourself. Trying to find a space where there are not others around when you're making that adjustment. A lot of mask wearing will be a learning process with all of us. So I've walked out of my office here without a mask, and I have to, someone, Ms. Maldonado or Ms. Parker might remind me. They might go, "Oh, Mr. Hunter, you're not wearing your mask." So I have to get that back on. So obviously at lunch, you're not wearing a mask. And so there are different times where we're going to have to help each other out with mask wearing. So we will be doing that. This is a learning and growing opportunity. We don't see this as a punitive environment. We're going to be learning and growing about this together.
So for in-person learning and for students, middle school specifically, who have advanced math class, how will this be handled with cohorts?
Really good question. So, and the question was about different levels of students.
Yes. So like, especially middle school, maybe advanced math.
Mm-hmm.
How would that be handled?
So we're gonna, as much as we can, differentiate within that cohort. So the math teachers have been doing this for years and are able to run different types of instruction within the same classroom. And the benefit to that will be we'll be able to maintain the high level of safety. I haven't heard a lot of other schools who are maintaining the same level of cohort integrity that we are doing. We are going to keep that cohort together, and we are also. I hope that you got the information about electives. We are also looking to make sure that with electives, students get to take their electives, but that they'll be doing that within their homerooms. So, for example, a couple kids in forensics might go to one corner of the room, and a couple kids who are doing home ec might go to another side of the room. This will be great for people who are hungry in the morning, because if you've got home ec making waffles for you, everybody gets to share. It's going to be great. So, instead of just those home ec kids being the only ones who get to eat breakfast, we're going to have an opportunity for multiple electives happening in the same space. Obviously, that's not going to work with band. What I'm working on right now, and we still have about a week to figure it out, which is to potentially have band outdoors. Obviously, the mask wearing and having a trumpet in your hand is not going to work. So, what we'd really like to do is put band potentially outside, which will be great because in the morning, in the fall, it's about 73 degrees and it's beautiful outside. So we're looking at trying to be able to space our band outside. I'm still working on the details, but obviously a special like that wouldn't work in the homeroom classes. But thank you for the question about the level. We want to make sure that the academic level, that you're able to continue to grow from that level. We don't want to set up a situation where you have to learn something you've already learned last year or 2 years ago. So absolutely.
So here's kind of a triple, quadruple question, but all the same. How do you find out when your assessment days are and pick up your computer if you're going to be online? How do you know, what were some of the other ones, Brandon? It's kind of the same one. How do you know who your teacher is and what your cohort is?
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, how do you, I think that was it in that one.
Yeah.
There's kind of a few questions all kind of surrounding that whole
Yeah.
thing. So I know we've said it at the last Facebook Live, but if you could just kind of repeat yourself.
So we hope. I know that. Excuse me. A lot of teachers have gotten a hold of parents and told them, "Yes, I'm your child's homeroom teacher." And
You need a break real quick.
no, we're good. We're good.
You've been going strong.
You can watch me drink some water. Teachers have been really hard at work calling. Middle school called today. I know that they weren't able to get a hold of everyone to introduce themselves, to tell them who your child's homeroom teacher is. But we've in some of those cases, if they've tried a couple times on the telephone to get a hold of you and they haven't been able to, they send emails, and they're certainly open to having a phone conversation even at that point. So write them back an email and say, please call again because I'd like to have a conversation. So we invite that.
One more.
So what is it? Is the cohort your homeroom teacher?
The cohort is your homeroom teacher. So it's going to be that. It's going to be that under 30 number. In most cases, it's somewhere between 21 and 26, 27 kids who are in that same homeroom with you. That's true for middle school, and it's also true for elementary school. So that group, your child's, if you're in elementary school and you have Mrs. Schumann, your homeroom teacher is your cohort. That group of students, and so it's a group of 20-ish students, and that is the cohort that we're trying to maintain the integrity with. So we're going to maintain integrity and space out for things like lunch, recess, hallway, and other areas. And that way we can kind of keep that protective bubble around those kids, each group of those kids.
So then the last one on that is your assessments and computer pickup. When that goes along with your teacher calling.
Correct. So your teacher, when your teacher calls, your teacher's going to talk about your assessment day. If you're in kindergarten to 5th grade, you're going to be taking assessments on campus. And if you are in streaming school, you'll be coming for that if you can. And if you can come, you'll be able to pick up your workbooks, your textbooks, and your computer. And that's if you're in streaming school. You'll pick those up on the assessment days. Those are the 5th and the 6th. That's next Wednesday and Thursday. Your teacher should set up a time with you to do that. If you're not able to come in those days, the 5th or the 6th, talk to the teacher and work something out in terms of an exchange if you're in streaming school. If you're in middle school, I believe those teachers are working out when they get a hold of you or they connect with you through email, phone. They'll tell you when to pick up materials if you're in streaming school.
So for students who require interventions and are utilizing streaming school, will they have a time with the teacher during the day as well, separate from the classroom?
Right. So it's how are we doing interventions to support students, gifted and talented students who need extra support, getting up to speed? How are we going to do that? We are currently still have our cadre of paraprofessionals, and we want to continue to engage them with small groups. Doing that is we're still figuring out how to structure that, because instead of having groups from different classrooms, we want them to do only groups from that classroom. They're also engaged with streaming school, so they'd be engaged so the interventions would happen not only with paraprofessionals, but also with teachers. So those interventions should be scheduled there.
One was, since we're not going to be using lockers for middle school this year, can those middle schoolers have their backpacking class if they're obviously in person?
Great question. I know that the teachers have been talking a lot about that one, about backpacks in the classroom. And how's that going to work? Yes, we're not going to be using the lockers. We are going to have students bring their stuff from class to class, and they will be in their backpack, ideally. So the one of the big challenges is all the movement. Well, what we've done is we've created a middle school schedule where between every period, between say that 3rd period at 9:30 and the next period at, the 4th period at 9:40, when that transition happens, we've set it up, the schedule, so that only 2 or 0 to 3 classes are transitioning at a time. So instead of all 7 classes coming into the hallways, that's not going to happen at this point, because what we're going to do is only transition 3 of them. And we're going to do it in a way where we can separate each of those groups, because we want someone to be able to go from one class to go from humanities to science. So we'd have one group wait over here, and then while another group filled into humanities, they would wait over here in the hall and then come over here. We need to make sure that the rooms are clean in between. We have some electrostatic sprayers. We have some procedures to get that done. Make sure that it's safe for another group of students to come into that space. But it also gives the middle schoolers an opportunity not to be in the same room all day, and also to get to take advantage of other spaces that are unique, like a science lab.
Do you have a good handle on who the online teachers are for each grade?
Yes.
And so, do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I can tell you. Yeah, so the question is, who are the online teachers? Who are the ones who are teaching the streaming school? The kindergarten teacher is Julie Dalton, and she, like I mentioned before, she has some students in the school and some students streaming. We also have, in first grade, we've got Mrs. Stroh. So Mrs. Stroh also is in that same boat. Some students in the classroom, some students at home. Then in second grade, it's a full classroom of, so to speak, of streaming students with Mrs. Bluen. Some of you know Abby Bluen from last year. And so she is our second grade person who's leading the streaming. Third grade currently is Mrs. Schumann. Fourth grade is Mrs. Nelson. And fifth grade is Mrs. Costantino. So the teachers are set. However, if we have a high demand of streaming students, if there's a bunch of families who say we want to go streaming and not, we're going to have to open that up to some other teachers just to make sure that we don't load all the students in streaming school onto one teacher. So currently, that's the way this setup looks, and then depending on the needs over the next week or so, we will be able to firm that up. So yeah, good question.
How are we going to separate school supplies? So if we're on in seat, obviously worrying about germs. How's that going to work?
Absolutely, very good question about how we're going to maintain. We're going to maintain cleanliness while we're going to be able to use all of the things that we use at school. We're going to a much more rigid, like pencil box system, or system where we keep all of our supplies in, and those won't be shared. I know teachers typically have a pile of pencils out on the table, so that can't happen because we won't be taking pencils and adding them back to that. We may have a system where students are able to take a pencil but not put it back in. So that's a possibility because of the nature of pencils. But other supplies like markers, tape, that kind of thing, those are going to be in pencil boxes or other contained in the desk. They might be just contained in the student's desk. So we won't be sharing. The goal is to not share school supplies on that level.
Technology question. Since the middle schoolers won't be using lockers, where would their phones go?
Yeah, really good question. Where do phones go when they're not using lockers? Absolutely, very good question. We would expect that phones would be during the school day would be off and in backpacks. So they wouldn't come out of the backpack; they'd stay in the backpack and stay off. If a student, that doesn't mean if a student needs to call home or they have a concern or a problem, that they would certainly be able to talk to a teacher and let us know if they need to communicate with somebody. So for students, we'll have those devices kept in backpacks.
There's a couple questions about breakfast. I know you brought up waffles earlier, so maybe
I'm getting hungry.
But one question: are the kids going to be able to get breakfast? And if so, what's that look like?
Mm-hmm. Again, everything's got to be distanced and well thought out in this new environment. So what we're looking at for breakfast, we typically have a maximum of about 40-ish students at breakfast. And what we're going to do is we are going to continue to have breakfast from 7:45 to 8 in the morning. And those students will come in and be distanced and spaced. So we realize that they're all from different cohorts, and we want to make sure that we maintain that distance. So 40 students in that space, we're looking forward to be able to distance them easily. The challenge that this leads to is lunch, and I want to just describe lunch a little bit because I think we have a really great solution. We are now going to have each grade level in the elementary school eat by themselves. And they're going to eat by, not each student, but each grade level will eat with each grade level. In the past, we had kindergarten and first together, second and third, and so on. So in this situation, what we're going to do is start lunch a little bit earlier and have kindergarten eat first. And what they're going to do is they are going to eat in the cafeteria, but we realize we can, and we've laid this out, we can space about 90 students in that environment, distance from each other, at least 6 feet. So the benefit to that is they don't have to bring lunches, hot lunches, all the way back down the hall and into the classroom, creating that challenge, that movement challenge, and they can go from there easily into any of the recess environments. So we're planning on spacing students and making sure that we have the fantastic oversight of that situation and make sure that happens.
So I have one
Yeah.
that came up, and I know that you're a health official, so we're going to take your word at gospel. So this is a difficult one. What about kids with asthma or other issues? Are they expected to wear their mask all day? You know, I know the governor put out 10 and above, and if you have a health condition, you know, are we just kind of following the same guidelines?
So currently we are following the same guidelines as the Colorado Department of Public Health and Colorado Department of Education and the governor. So, and the El Paso County Health and District 49. So the only place where we differ currently from District 49 is the K-4 mask, or the grades 1 to 4 masks. So that area we're going to address in the board meeting, and we're going to address how we're going to handle that then. You know, the board's always open to some feedback, I know, so we'll look forward to your contributions there. So that's the I don't know if I've answered the question.
Yeah, I think you did. That's
Okay.
kind of the answer we gave,
Yeah.
but just wanted them to hear it. I don't think we're going to do anything different than what the governor tells us.
We're handling multiple inputs for our trying to gather data. So we want to be very data driven, just as we, you know, there are a lot of officials who are very data driven with this. We want to make sure we're responding to not only what's happening in sort of Colorado or the country, but we want to make sure that we're responding to El Paso specifically, and we're trying to gather the best information we can from other school districts and not making these decisions lightly. We are revisiting and visiting regularly the information that comes in.
So I guess the last one, just to be clear, if you ordered an EduKit, do they come to the school, or does it all depend on where you ask for it to be delivered? I haven't ordered.
So I'm smiling because there's a huge pallet of EduKits in the hallway as you enter the school. They're ready to be opened and torn apart. So they're here at the school ready for you. If you've made that decision to get an EduKit, which means that it gives you school supplies that are already set up for you, all that's here and ready for you. So when you come in on those first visit days, you'll be able to access that.
I think that's it, unless
There's one for recess. What will recess look like?
Good question. The plan currently for a recess is to maintain the cohorts in their in the way that the way we've set them up. So unlike the previous recesses, you may be familiar with last year, where students from kindergarten would be playing on the same playground with first graders, and all of them would be out there. All, say, 200 of them are out there. In this environment, what we're going to do is have recess be divided up into those cohorts. So the group of 20-ish, 25-ish, those students would play together. And we're going to use, in order to do that, we're going to use a variety of environments. We're going to try to break the playground up into multiple spaces, using the kindergarten playground, utilizing the field behind the school, to make sure that we can set out different spaces for that cohort to play. We want to, absolutely, recess is really important. We've put a lot of energy into setting up 2 recesses for students who come, who are coming to the school. There'll be 2 recess, not just the lunch recess, but also an additional recess. That's for K-5. I think middle school may only have 1 recess, but sometimes they eke out another one, and I'm sure they'll find a way to do that also.
So question, will online students be able to take part in things like Picture Day? Or will Picture Day even be a thing this year?
So a lot of details we have to absolutely work out. If we have visitors who come to the school and present in places, if we're doing in order to keep those cohorts, we may not be doing presentations in the gym in the same way we usually do. That may be happening over our televisions and someone projecting. So we're going to be working out some of those details as we go. But the information we have to keep the community safe, to keep the kids safe, we are really going to try our best to keep these cohorts intact and to make sure that we're using best practices in terms of cleaning and personal hygiene. We're teaching about all of that.
So we were about to wrap up. Now the questions are coming back in. So
Good.
You know, if I don't know if it's done.
No, it's
Let's do a
fantastic.
couple
It's
more.
great news.
Can you? So let's see. Here's a good one. Will young kids, kindergarten, be able to share items, toys, crafts, etc., etc.? The social emotional is so important at this age.
Absolutely. I had a conversation about that subject with some of the kindergarten teachers last week, and what we talked about was that some of the items like school supplies would be great to have separate. Some of the books we want to be very mindful of. We're not just sharing everything. But when it comes to things like sort of a play center or a Lego station or that sort of thing, we want to be able to continue to have that. And so we are currently looking at having students be able to play in the classroom together with those items. Obviously, the teacher would be cleaning them. We have protocols for cleaning those, but we want to make sure that also that there's that opportunity for the social, emotional, and play.
One other question. If a teacher or student shows symptoms of COVID, do the students in that class have to self-isolate for 14 days?
A really good question. So the question is, if a student shows COVID symptoms, do they have to isolate? Does the whole class have to isolate? Does the teacher? The current answer is that's a complex answer, because what happens is we have a number of different responses at that point. One is anyone with a symptom, we need to engage in our isolation room, our room where student might go with another adult who's managing that situation, and call parents and describe the condition. At that point, what happens is our nurse and our school health team come together and start to do an analysis of the situation. They start to do contact tracing. They start to ask questions like, was a mask being worn? How close were people when the mask was worn versus wasn't worn? Which people were they near? And then trying to identify piece by piece. So there wouldn't be a knee-jerk. In most cases, there's not a knee-jerk reaction to say everybody's on quarantine for 14 days. There's an investigation into sort of what happened and what are the details we can gather to give us the best, help us make the best decision possible. So it may involve quarantine at that point, but it may involve, the quarantine of maybe 2 students or maybe just the teacher and the student. So it sort of depends on the situation and what they're able to analyze based on their work. I don't know exactly how the contact tracing works. That's an area that we're going to rely on the professionals for. We contract with the district, who the head school nurse is in regular contact with the Department of Health for the county, and they have regular communications about procedures, and they already have set up procedures. The reason that the schools are using that process is because they've already had to do contact tracing in other environments like businesses and other places. So they're using public health protocols to do that contact tracing.
I think you've done a great job answering everybody. They really peppered you with some great stuff. Yeah, just going to double check real quick, but
Good.
Thank you, Scott. You did a tremendous job, because there's a lot of questions that I know you don't always have the answers to, and getting them
Hopefully,
put out on Facebook with your face right there, telling the people.
Well, everybody did it. You guys did great.
But from the board, I know you don't see us, but I want to welcome Ms. Maldonado and Ms. Parker. We're super excited to have them. We're sad to see Ms. Brizick leave, but I think this team, this triple-headed team is gonna, they're gonna really bring a lot to our school. So welcome aboard, and again, we'll come out with some more information on Friday regarding masks and the start date. I know a bunch of you keep asking, you may be jumping on late. Right now, we're still slated for the 10th, but we will vote to push it to the 17th on Friday. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right.
Great.
You got some good comments.